Warner Brothers would create cultural problems at Netflix. Netflix has about 14,000 employees, and Warner Brothers is about 35,000, some of which they wouldn't be buying, but it would be about twice as many employees from, let's call it the old world, the 50-year-old studio, who really is averse to taking risks, and they really do things the old-fashioned way and siloed, competitive, internally fighting culture. And that isn't Netflix. Netflix is sort of single-purpose, disruptor, everybody on the same page, move fast and break things, iterate if you get it wrong. And I just feel like the culture that Warner Brothers is an anchor, would be an anchor to Netflix at a time when generative AI technology risks are collapsing timeframes into weeks with the changes. So we think the next disruption created by generative AI requires really fast reaction times, which Netflix has the fastest in media, and it would really slow their reaction times if they suddenly brought on twice as many employees that were stuck in the 50-year-old business model of the Hollywood studio.
And you quantified the drag that this would have on Netflix. What does that look like?
I think what we're saying is that the $83 billion purchase price that they would pay to buy Warner Brothers would add another, that cash would be at risk of not returning its capital because they would bring all these cultural problems and envelop the entire consolidated $400 billion entity.
Laura, so as it relates to Gen AI, is that a friend or a foe to Hollywood, to the media companies?
Yeah, so to date, Paul, what isn't different about Gen AI is it's being used as tools by humans, in which case it's not different than the web. It's not different than our smartphones, our Apple phones, our, flashlights and communication devices and they replace Thomas guides. So they're utility. So far, Gen AI technology has been a tool or a utility for human beings. I think the vision of Sam Altman at OpenAI, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg over at Meta, is to have, and certainly, of course, of NVIDIA, is to achieve what's called super intelligence, where machines train machines, in which case it replaces people at some level. It does better thinking, faster, it's less emotional. So if that comes true, and they're saying that's 10 years out, that's super intelligence, it would actually replace humans. But near term, it's just like the other three technological disruptions you and I have seen, where it makes our life better. It's a tool for humans to do faster, better, safer work.
So, Laura, you make the case that Netflix doesn't need to buy Warner Brothers Discovery. It would be adding an anchor, and it would drag it down because it's this disruptor. What about Paramount Skydance? Doesn't that argument also apply, or does it not?
It does, but the distinction I would make is Netflix is large enough to go it alone, and with generative AI collapsing timeframes, their culture is really well suited to the technological, the future of the next 5 years. P-Sky is subscale. It probably can't survive without bulking up, and it doesn't really have time to build in a generative AI world, because it's just too small and change is happening too fast. So it needs to bulk up, and buying something, we think they could get it closed in 6 months, because we think the senior Ellison is good friends with Donald Trump, and he would have it sail through regulatory. So it would happen faster, there'd be less uncertainty, and it would allow P-Sky to survive. So I think they have to take the technological risk because they must have scale, or they're gonna die. So they might die because I'm right about the culture problem and the anchor problem, but they're going to die if they don't buy something anyway. So it gives them a better chance to survive, I think, to buy Warner.
And Laura, you followed Netflix since its inception here. This is a company and a management team and a board that's been pretty adamant. They'd rather build from within than buy. What do you think has changed here? Because this is a huge turnaround for this company strategic wise.
Paul, I really wanted to write a note that says dogma is bad. I mean, they said they'd never do advertising. Now they do advertising. They said we'll never do live sports. And now they broadcast NFL games on Christmas Day. And then they said, well, we don't like the Hollywood, we don't like the theatrical window, and we don't want to release any films in the theatrical window unless talent, like directors, force us because they want Academy Award consideration. which is a requirement to get an Academy Award. You have to have been released in theaters. So that is really hurting them. Those words are really hurting them with the talent community. So when they say we will never do something, please take that with a grain of salt, because they often reverse themselves completely 180 degrees. And it's really, those words about the theatrical window are really hurting the feedback loops with talent, like big talent, like Jim Cameron and Scorsese, like all these people that really are big talent. They all want a theatrical window.
Yep.
And Netflix, they're scared to death that if Netflix bought Warner's, the theatrical window over 5 years would go to zero.